Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
What was I talking about today? Oh yeah, the gift of knowing and being known. And I so appreciate our music team finding a song that so beautifully fits this message of friendship. And we sang, I'm a friend of Gott. I love that. You just kept saying, I'm a friend of Gott. He calls me friend. I do. I call you. That's my last name if you're new. Which does mean God in German, so I'm just saying. Got a couple of one-liners for you. I have a supplier here in the church that gives me these little wonderful goodies. I like these. I hate it when I see an old person and realize we went to high school together. I told my wife that she should embrace her mistakes, so she hugged me. We're going to be equal opportunity. My husband told me I only have two faults. I don't listen, and something else. Not like those. So today we are talking about friendship. This is Friendship Sunday. We tried this last year, and it just felt so good. And even though we don't do name tags all the time, it's great to be able to go, hi, John. Just be able to call someone by their name. That's part of it. Who was it that it was one of those sales guy? We did positive thinking, and it said that the sweetest sound of the human ear is the sound of one's own voice. Sorry. I got that all wrong. Dale Carnegie, I think, who said that, the sound, we all love to hear our name spoken. We all have a deep need to be known. It's a human, universal need to be seen, to be heard, to be touched, to be known, to be acknowledged that we're here. And we are bringing something unique, something that can come no other way. This is our teaching in Unity. We rely on this fundamental fact that God doesn't make any mistakes, and every human being is on purpose, is here for a reason. Ralph Waldo Emerson said it this way: the fact that I am here shows me that the soul had need of an organ. Shall I not assume the post? We love individuality. We love diversity. We love authenticity in this community. Our value statements, we have being, becoming, and belonging. Our belonging statement says we create a spiritual home for all people, knowing that we are one body and that we belong to each other. It's a big calling to create a spiritual home for all people, because you've seen some of the people out there, right? You've seen them. You know. And what we say is that we do create a home for all people. And that doesn't mean that we accept all behaviors, that we ask that people be respectful of our differences. We ask that people honor that we have different perspectives. That's why I gave that perspective talk last week, so we can Here's the thing. You think you're seeing objective reality, and you're not. You're seeing your perspective through your perspectives, and I am too. And so that requires a lot of need for grace, for allowance, for letting things be as we are together, honoring one another. My friend Kathy Hearn says, spiritual community is where we grow up all over each other. And so we must find a way that we can be present fully, imperfections and all, and see one another. And see beneath all of the pain to the truth of the indwelling Christ, to see that God is seeking to reveal itself in and through the lives of everyone you meet. And it's really a beautiful view from up here. We should just one at a time come on up here and look. It's so beautiful to see how differently and beautifully God shows up. I've been saying, and a lot of people are saying, that this is the most disconnected and lonely time in human history. Even though we have more people to connect with, and we're connected people all across the world, there is an epidemic of loneliness right now. And people are leaving churches and synagogues and mosques in record numbers and isolating. And so, as we're seeking to create a community and grow this community, we want to first acknowledge that it seems to be getting harder and harder to make true connections. Everybody used to belong to a bowling league. Everyone used to be, there was the lodges. Do you remember the lodges? Where people would just gather just to, there was a purpose, but it was really about social connection. There was a much stronger social connection. There was a weave there. And I'm sure that there are a lot of reasons why that happened, and I'm not so, the sort of the disintegration of all of that. I've been reading David Brooks' new book, it's How to Really Know a Person. And that's really what it's about, just seeing where we are. And he offers some really practical advice for how we can begin to rebuild that fabric of connection. And it's going to require that we do some things, that we begin to be a little less judgy. I know I only judge judgmental people myself, but that we let go of some of our judgment. Jesus had something to say about that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. We become a little bit more vulnerable. We have to learn to share our pain with one another. That's required for deep connection. And that we must be willing to see somebody else so that we can be seen, to know someone else. I taught a wonderful class this week here at Unity. So Prosperity is the spiritual education and enrichment class. And I did an exercise with the class on Friday. I think I made it up. I don't remember. I may have borrowed it from someone. But I asked 4 questions, and then the students, about 20 of them, were able to just write their answers. And the questions were this. Have you ever received a gift out of what felt like obligation? And if so, you perceived that they were giving it out of obligation. How did that feel? Have you ever received a gift that was given in generosity? How did that feel? Have you ever given a gift out of obligation? How did that feel? Have you ever given a gift, or I know you have, but think of a time you gave a gift in generosity. How did that feel? And as they shared in groups of 2 and 3, and then we shared in the larger group again, there were some surprised people in there because they were like, oh, the difference wasn't whether I gave or received. The difference came from how the gift was given. And this speaks to a universal spiritual principle. That when we get in touch with generosity, which is the natural givingness of life to itself, then giving and receiving feel the same. Now, this was a prosperity class. We were talking largely about our finances, but it's more than that. It's about the way we are in relationship with our bodies. It's the way we are in relationship with our time, money, freedom, but also with our vocation, our gift to the world, and people. Relationships. And so some of us have from time to time felt excluded, have felt victimized by other people's actions. I know you haven't, but I have at some time in my past. I felt that way. And I just shut down. And I'm not going to give anything from this place because I've been hurt. So I'm just going to be shut down. I think that that's one of the big causes of our isolation is that we've stopped giving and we're not receiving. And we have the idea that it's not safe to give and receive in community and in friendship. And so today I hope to give a message that will maybe inspire us to put it out there a little bit more, to give a little bit more than we have been. I want to read from Jesus. This is in Luke chapter 6. It's sometimes called the Sermon on the Plain. It's a lot of the same material that Matthew has in chapters 5 through 7, the Sermon on the Mount. So scholars believe that this is the truest teaching that we have historically from this master teacher, this rabbi from the Middle East 2,000 years ago, Jesus of Nazareth. It's a beautiful, beautiful teaching. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Now that last verse, verse 38, you probably heard if you've been around any prosperity teaching. It's about giving financial gifts and you will receive the benefit of the good of that. But I think it's interesting because it's paired with all this stuff that has nothing to do with giving money. It's about relationships. Don't judge and you won't be judged. Don't condemn, you won't be condemned. Forgive and you will be forgiven. What Jesus is teaching us here is that there is a law of giving and receiving that applies to human relationships. And if we block our giving, we automatically block our receiving. And we're going to get back what we give. I did that opposite. We're going to get back what we give. And so, judging those judgy people, the judgment will come back to us. We will be judged. Though Judaism, which was Jesus' religion, he was not a Christian, and Christianity, the religion that was formed after him, they are largely practiced as dualistic, that there is a heavenly or spiritual plane, and then there is a material plane, which is different. I believe this points to the fact that Jesus was a non-dual teacher, that we're part of a cycle of life, a part of an interconnectedness where everything is one, and we are all expressions of that infinite life, and as we give out, we receive in that same way. And so the key, I believe, for us to build a stronger network of friendships personally and collectively is that we find a way to give our time, our deep listening to one another, to give the gift of telling our own story. For those in the recovery community, we know how people just sharing their experience and their strength and their hope heals other people. But we have to be willing to connect and put it out there. From A Course in Miracles, I've always loved this statement. Only what you have not been given can be lacking in any situation. Only what you have not given is lacking in any situation in your life. Now, this is not meant to cause a guilt trip. This is not meant to overburden you. It's just a simple spiritual truth of the way things work. That if we're feeling cut off and isolated, find some way to give of yourself. We're going to make that really easy for you today. More on that later. David Brooks says that we don't connect to other people for many reasons, but he said there's a researcher that he found out that we overestimate how much effort it's going to be, and we underestimate what the benefit we're going to get is from it. And so there was I've forgotten his name, I didn't write that down, but there was a psychologist and a researcher who was riding on the commuter train to work, and looked around and saw that every single person was looking at their screen and ignoring the people around them. And thought, why are we doing that? And so he began to do some research into this thing. Why is it that we avoid human contact? And this is what he found, that we overestimate how hard it's going to be, and we underestimate how good it's going to be. People are eager, often desperate to be seen, heard, and understood, and yet we have built a culture and a set of manners in which that doesn't happen. The way you fix that is simple, easy, and fun. Ask someone to tell you their story. More on that later. You know, not everyone is going to be a good fit for you in the world. Have you noticed that? I have too. There are just some places that just don't fit as well. Years ago in this teaching, as I began to take up these principles, I was working on my career and I was wanting to expand. And in the beginning, I would take any gig they would give me. I was a musician, and so I'd play at the nursing home, you bet, $50, thank you. And it just began to expand. And after a few years of practicing these principles in my work life, what I noticed is the places where I was being invited to give my gift were a really good fit for me. It just felt like there was a Michael Gott-shaped space. And I just got to slide into it and just do my thing. It was such an aha moment for me. It's like, oh, I feel like I belong. That what I'm bringing is actually what's needed here. And I'm happy to give it. And there's like this beautiful giving and receiving. This is called Small Kindnesses by Danusha Lamaris. I've been thinking about the way when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by. Or how strangers still say, "Bless you," when someone sneezes. That's a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we are saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee hot and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them and for them to smile back, for the waitress to call us honey as she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire. Only these brief moments of exchange. What if they are the true dwelling place of the holy, these fleeting temples we make together when we say, "Here, have my seat. Go ahead, you first. I like your hat." Isn't that beautiful? Holy, sacred, these moments of kindness that we can offer to one another. What is it that keeps us from giving ourselves into friendships and community? I think fear, obviously. That's what usually keeps people from doing anything. Fear of rejection, fear of, confrontation. I do a lot of work on this fear to faith model, and we did that in the class this week too, and I just had someone do one on me this week. It's a beautiful process for distilling and discerning what our fear is so that we can see that it has no spiritual truth and let it go. We replace whatever that is with the faith that we're one with God and all is well. But I've done this work enough for dozens and dozens of people that there are two major fears that I've seen. One is that I'm not enough. I'm lacking in some fundamental way. And the second is that it's not safe for me to be who I am. So for us to give into friendship, to give into community, we must feel safe. And we must know that what we're giving has value. As I mentioned, not everyone in the world is going to be a good fit for you. Good thing there are a lot of different people to try on. Here in this community called Unity of Houston, 105 years that people have been gathering together to make friends, to study these principles, to pray together, to lift each other up. 105 years. Anybody here when we started in 1919? No? Okay. Interesting that none of those original people gathering in Bertha Miller's living room and on Rutland Street in the Height, they're not here anymore, and yet this remains. This community is still here. And now we're the ones. We're the ones. And I know some of you, this isn't your church, some friend dragged you here today, I know. And some of you have been kind of, I don't know if it's still my church or not, it's changed. They're flying pride flags out there. I don't know if this is my place anymore. What I want to offer to you today is that just as not everybody's going to fit for you in the world, not everyone in this church is going to be a fit for you either, but I bet we have your size. I bet we do. I bet we have a few people that are going to be a really nice fit for your heart, for your soul, for your spiritual growth, somebody that can walk alongside you. That's why we find these ways that we can really get to know each other in smaller groups and even one-on-one so that we can begin to find our people, and we're all one people, and that there's some who are just a nicer fit. I love our choir. Thank you, Stephanie, for leading us. Well, I love our choir. It's amazing. And time again, I have seen how this group has gathered around. I was thinking about our Ellen Reynolds, who died by suicide a few years ago. She struggled so much, and how the women in this choir just put their arms around her, gave her so much love, and sang at her memorial right here. And in those smaller ways too, just finding ways you guys you are that love of God for one another. I really do think that church is a laboratory for social skills. In addition to being a school for learning spiritual principle, it's also a safe place for you to try stuff out. You can experiment with getting to know people here, and we're already agreeing that we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best to make space for you, make room for you, and connect with you. And we're not always going to get it right, but we're going to do our best. And the spirit groups that we do, you can try one spirit group. I know some people have found their group immediately, and these are my people. And the others like, I'm going to keep looking. I'm still shopping. But just to stay connected, it's so good. There are two things, I think, skills that we need in people, relationships, community building, that we can do here. We can learn vulnerability. We can learn to tell the truth of our human experience without being judged or cast out. That's really big. You know, there are a lot of churches that say everyone belongs, but when you reveal that you are a member of the LGBTQ community, is that true? It's generally not. And I'm just using that as one example, that you don't have to believe in anything. There's not a creed that you have to sign and say, I believe in, if you grew up like I did in the Methodist church, we had some creeds. We had to say, I believe this. See, faith isn't a belief in something. Faith is something we live from. And that's what we offer here, is you get to work out your faith with God. You get to work out what feels right for you, but we can do it together and make space for one another. So we have to learn to be vulnerable and tell our truth. And we can also learn to set boundaries. Oh, that's a hard one. Because sometimes I have to take care of me and not you. And that isn't easy sometimes. There was I forgot his first name, Prentice. He says that that boundaries are the distance from which I can love me and you simultaneously. That's a really important thing for us to learn. You get to practice that in spiritual community, in small circles. We spoke a few weeks ago from David Brooks' book about being illuminators or diminishers. In every crowd, there are diminishers and there are illuminators. Diminishers make people feel small and unseen. They see other people as things to be used, not as persons to be befriended. They stereotype and ignore. They are so involved with themselves that other people are just not on their radar screen. Illuminators, on the other hand, have a persistent curiosity about other people. They have been trained or have trained themselves in the craft of understanding others. They know what to look for and how to ask the right questions at the right time. They shine the brightness of their care on other people and make them feel bigger, deeper, respected, and lit up. That's what we're trying to create here. We're trying to teach you, teach me how to be better illuminators, to let go of our diminishing practices, making room for one another. This is by Robert Fulghum. Giants, wizards, and dwarfs was the game to play. Being left in charge of about 80 children, 7 to 10 years old, while their parents were off doing parenty things, I mustered my troops in the church social hall and I explained the game. It's a large-scale version of rock, paper, scissors and involves some intellectual decision-making, but the real purpose of the game is to make a lot of noise and run around chasing people until nobody knows which side you're on or who won. Organizing a room full of wired-up grade schoolers into 2 teams, explaining the rudiments of the game, achieving consensus on group identity, all this is no mean accomplishment, and we did it with a right goodwill, and we're ready to go. The excitement of the chase had reached a critical mass, and I yelled out, "You have a decision to make right now. Are you a giant, a wizard, or a dwarf?" And while the groups huddled in a frenzied, whispered consultation, a tug came at my pants leg. A small child stands there looking up and asks in a small, concerned voice, "Where do the mermaids stand?" Where do the mermaids stand? A long pause, a very long pause. "Where do the mermaids stand?" says I. "Yes," she says. "You see, I'm a mermaid." "There are no such thing as mermaids." "Oh yes, I am one." She didn't relate to being a giant, a wizard, or a dwarf. She knew her category, mermaid, and was not about to leave the game and go over and stand against the wall where a loser would stand. She intended to participate wherever mermaids fit into the scheme of things without giving up dignity or integrity. She took it for granted that there was a place for mermaids and that I would know just where it was. Well, Where do the mermaids stand? All the mermaids, all those who are different, who do not fit the norm, who do not accept the available boxes and pigeonholes. Answer that question, and you can build a school, a nation, or a world on it. What was my answer at that moment? Every once in a while, I say the right thing. The mermaid stands right here by the king of the sea, says I. Yes, right by the king of the fools, says I to myself. And so we stood there hand in hand, reviewing the troops of wizards, giants, and dwarves as they roiled by in wild disarray. It is not true, by the way, that mermaids do not exist. I know at least one personally. I've held her hand. I have a vision. I'd like to share it with you. We live in a bleak landscape in many ways right now because of our hatred and division. And it grieves my heart to see it in my own family, in my own circle of friends, how we've become so ideologically fixated, and people are so quickly sorted into the right group or the wrong group. But I have a vision that we could be one of those places where we start to heal that. Not out in the world, just here in this church, and just see what happens. I had this talk all put together, and I stopped for gas on the way into work, and it led me to listen to an additional 3 minutes of a podcast this morning. Krista Tippett's On Being, if you know it, it's great. And I got this piece. I started crying at the gas pump, because that's it. There's a whole field now called biological mimicry or biomimicry. Do you know about this? Where instead of trying to build these squares and rectangles and hard surfaces, let's start building human things that look like nature. And I don't mean just architecture. I mean organizational structures. I mean, how can we find how the real world is not the hard world of Western economics? The real world is the trees and the mountains and the rivers. It works when we don't get in the way. How can we build something that is natural to nature? And so the vision I have for healing the world, starting right here, it's something called nucleated reforestation. Okay, good night. Thanks, everybody. Would you like to know what that is? So in the places where clear cutting has occurred and the forest has been destroyed, what a lot of the environmental people have done is they've gone in and they've planted rows and rows and rows of a single kind of tree to fix it. And what has been discovered is that it can work. It can grow a forest. It's not quite a natural forest. Some of the pieces are missing. But they found something that does work, and it's called nucleated reforestation, where you take a much smaller area with some of those trees, yes, but some other smaller plants, even some insects, and you begin to just invite people. This is what made me cry. It says you're going to create a welcoming island. That's what I want to do. That's my calling, is to create Unity of Houston as a welcoming island in this time of division and pain. Do you know that to reforest this way, it only takes 16% as many resources? You only have to cover a small portion of the land. You build these islands. You don't do anything to the space between. And guess what happens? They grow together. We're not going to be the only people doing this, and I pray you will join me in this work of creating a welcoming island. People are tired of the division and the name calling and taking sides on every issue, and you don't belong here and you belong here. I want to create more space. I want to create a bigger welcome in community. And we're still going to teach these spiritual principles the way we teach them, and I will tell you they are life transformational. If you haven't taken classes yet, take the next one offered. But the main thing is we're going to do it in community. Our purpose statement for Unity of Houston says, in community, we nurture and empower each other, transforming our lives that we may serve the world. That's the work we're up to. We want to do it in love, in connection, in belonging. Everyone belongs right here in this welcoming island. And if no one has told you today that they love you, by God, I mean it. I love you. Thank you. Thank you.
you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.